Welcome to Shine a Light On. I'm Joanna Verifat. And in this four-part series, The Next Journey, I'm exploring what it might look like to step into a new season of life with a little more curiosity, confidence, and purpose. Not because we have all the answers, but because sometimes one small step is enough to help us discover what might come next. We've talked about nurturing yourself first. We've talked about embracing the unknown. And now we've arrived at the E, explore new possibilities. And I have to say, I think this might be the fun part because this is where we get curious. It's where we begin putting ourselves out there in ways we never have thought about before. Trying something new, meeting different people, exploring new interests, communities, learning opportunities. And importantly, we're not necessarily making giant commitments. We're experimenting. We're trying things on. Because not every new possibility has to become your next big thing. Sometimes it's enough to be curious. Give it a try. See where it leads. And if there's one thing I've learned over these past few years, it's this. You don't know until you try. Recently, I caught myself saying yes to something that a few years ago I would never have imagined doing. And then I thought, actually, this seems to be becoming a recurring theme in my new Canadian life. When I retired from teaching and moved back to Canada, I had spent so many years identifying myself as a teacher. That was who I was, or at least it was a very big part of who I was. But retirement gave me an opportunity to begin asking, who am I now? And maybe even more importantly, who else could I become? I didn't have an answer. So instead of trying to figure it all out, I started trying things. One of those things was applying for a part-time job at a winery. Now, I originally applied to be a hostess, and that made perfect sense to me. I knew I could meet and greet customers, make them feel welcome, seat them, and then I could learn about the winery along the way. Perfect. Except my future boss had other ideas. Only a few minutes into our interview, she told me she wasn't going to hire me as the hostess. She wanted to hire me as a wine tasting associate. I laughed. I explained that I had absolutely no formal experience or education in wine, other than I like drinking it. But she saw something I didn't. She told me that she could teach me about wine. You were a teacher, she said. You can teach our guests about our wine, our vineyard, and our business. And furthermore, she said, what I can't teach you, Joanna, you already have. Your natural enthusiasm and personality to engage with our guests, make them feel comfortable, and give them an interesting and enjoyable experience. Well, I wasn't convinced. I wondered whether she actually knew what she was getting herself into. I certainly didn't feel qualified. But after talking for about an hour, she convinced me to try it on. And so I did. That was 4 years ago. And I'm still there part-time today, and I love it. Who would have thought? Certainly not me. During the off season at the winery, I decided I wanted to try something more. I wanted something more to do. So I wanted to be active, I wanted to be around people, and I decided to apply for a front of the store serving position at a bakery. Again, zero experience, but by this point something had changed. The winery had already shown me that perhaps I was capable of learning things that had absolutely nothing to do with being a teacher. So I thought, why not? I was brave and scared at exactly the same time. The owner who interviewed me seemed completely flabbergasted that a retired teacher wanted to work in her bakery. Before she would hire me, she suggested I come in on a busy Saturday morning, have a coffee, she told me, watch what happens. So I did. I sat there with my coffee and I watched the busy cafe, the customers coming through the doors and the long lineups. And I think she was maybe trying to scare me off a bit. But there I went again. Scared, yes, but willing to give it a go. And yes, there was a learning curve. It was physically demanding sometimes, emotionally demanding, fast paced, and completely new. And yet, I loved it. I loved the energy. I loved connecting and engaging with the customers. I loved the combination of people and activity. And I stayed there for almost 3 years. Another one of those if they could see me now moments. A winery, a bakery, who would ever have thought? Looking back now, what interests me most isn't really the winery or the bakery. It's what those experiences taught me. Each time I tried something new, I learned a little more about myself. I gained a little more confidence, and that confidence made the next experiment easier. But I also began to realize something else. I wasn't actually starting from scratch. I was taking skills I already had and learning how to use them in completely different ways. As a teacher, I knew, of course, how to communicate. I knew how to read a room. I knew how to engage people, explain things, listen, adapt, and hopefully make people feel more comfortable. At the winery, suddenly I was using those same skills to teach people about wine. And at the bakery, I was using them to connect with customers and work in a fast moving team. The setting was different, the job was different, but I was still bringing so much of who I already was with me. And I think that was an important discovery. Maybe letting go of who we were doesn't mean leaving everything behind. Maybe we get to take the best of who we've been and just use it in new ways as we discover who we're becoming. The winery helped me believe I could step outside my identity as a teacher, and that helped me walk into the bakery. And another small step, it was happening. I also was a substitute teacher on call. I worked as an education assistant. I began volunteering online with students in Ukraine. I mentored teachers. I met new people. I had conversations that led to other conversations. None of it was part of some carefully designed retirement plan. There was no giant roadmap hanging on my wall saying, "This is exactly what Joanna will do." Believe me, I was simply exploring, trying things, and paying attention to what interested me, and seeing where one step might lead. Then another unexpected opportunity came along. Through a connection, I was introduced to Carrie Skolin, who was bringing women together to write and share stories about moments in their lives when they had faced challenges and moved through them. I was invited to participate in her Found Her book series. And once again, I said yes. I wrote a chapter called The Ride of My Life about becoming a first-time teacher in the Netherlands. That experience itself was certainly a story about fear and excitement coming together. But something else happened because I wrote that chapter. Writing the chapter led me to being invited as a guest on a podcast. And that planted another seed. And eventually that it led me to where I am now. And that is starting my own podcast, Shine a Light On. If you had told me 5 years ago that I would have my own podcast, I probably would have told you, "You're nuts." But that's exactly my point. I couldn't see it then. There was no way I could have known where all those small decisions would lead. Looking back, though, I can see those stepping stones. One experience led to another. One conversation opened another door. And one small step took me to a different place. It gave me confidence. Things that seemed almost inconsequential at the time became important building blocks. And slowly, without really realizing it, I was creating my next chapter. I think sometimes we put enormous pressure on ourselves when we enter a new stage of life, especially retirement. We ask, what am I going to do now? What's my purpose? How do I create an exciting new chapter? Where do I even begin? And we think we need an answer. Maybe we don't. Maybe instead of asking ourselves to figure out our entire next chapter, we could simply ask, what am I curious enough to explore? And that's a very different question. There's less pressure. You don't have to commit. You don't have to know where it's going. You don't have to be even good at it. You don't even have to like it. You simply are trying something on. And one size definitely does not fit all. We each have to try things on until we begin discovering what fits us. I still don't know exactly what my future holds. I don't know what the next grand opportunity might be. And I'm beginning to think that's okay. What I am learning is that saying yes to trying new and different things has helped me to continue to grow. Not everything will pan out. Not every experience will lead somewhere big. And not every possibility has to become your next big thing. Sometimes it's just enough to be curious. Give it a try. See where it leads. Because curiosity can be our compass. We don't always need to know the destination. We just need to be willing to explore what sparks our interest. So I'd like to leave you with a question. What are you curious enough to explore without needing all the answers? Maybe there's something you've been thinking about. A class, a volunteer opportunity, a part-time job, a new community, a conversation, something creative, something you've never done before. You don't have to make a giant leap. Your next journey may begin with one brave, tiny step. And if you'd like somewhere to capture some of those thoughts, you can download my free Next Journey Reflection Guide from the Shine a Light On website. There's another question in the guide I'd love you to consider. What's one small action I could take this week? Not next year. Not once you've figured everything out, this week. As I encourage you to follow the next framework, nurture yourself first, embrace the unknown, explore new possibilities, and finally, trust yourself. I'm realizing that I'm living it right alongside you. I'm curious too. I'm still wondering what's in my next chapter. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I'm learning to trust myself enough to keep exploring, to take action, to try things on, and to keep taking those little stepping stones, even when I can't see exactly where they're leading. Because sometimes one conversation, one opportunity, or one small step is enough to light the way forward. So perhaps this week, take a chance on yourself. Try something on. You don't have to know where it's going. Just stay curious and see where it leads. And that brings us beautifully to the final part of the next framework. Trust yourself again. Because at some point, after nurturing ourselves, embracing the unknown, and exploring new possibilities, we have to trust ourselves enough to take that next step. And that's where we'll go together next. Thank you for listening to Shine a Light On. I'm Joanna Vervat, and until the next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and remember, you don't have to have it all figured out to take the next small step. Thank you.